Wow, that wasn't too bad. Hey, it looks like I solved the whole lighting issue. I'm so proud of myself. Anyway, welcome, folks. Welcome back. This is my weekly live stream here on my very small, continually tiny, and unknown channel of the past 15 years, 16 years. Could be. No, I think it was 2009. Really, it was 2008 or 7, I believe. No, 8 that I started doing this, thinking that posting videos was equal. Of course, it's not. It's content creation. So here we are, still doing this, still in this room. Got a couple of paint jobs, some new doors. That's about it. But ultimately, we are still here and we're still trying our best. And when I say we, I mean myself, along with anyone who's been along for the ride, anyone that's new, welcome aboard. The entire point of this channel was to get people to know that I'm alive and that I have the ability to do certain things that have been ignored my whole life, and that I have novels out there that I would like. As opposed to paying for Patreon, you could help with supporting my channel and myself in my attempt to help people not just demand more, but get more. I have tons of ideas for all of you, entertainment, art, and otherwise. But it's another Friday. It's very nice day out here. It's a little chilly, very windy. It's been windy for a few days. Apparently, there was a tropical storm or a hurricane. And from what I know, there's another one coming. But that's not my problem. That is somebody else's. And although I do have empathy for all of you, as my old friend used to say, well, serves you right for living out wherever you are. So anyway, I wanted to talk today about pretty much anything, but there was a topic of conversation that came up on my homepage here on YouTube, a couple of them. Now, I just want you all to know that I have certain subscribers or certain subscriptions, and I would like to lower that number because one thing I do know is I don't want any fucking updates about PlayStation anything. Sony can rot in hell. I don't want to know anything about them. They are the worst fraud out there aside from Microsoft, which, by the way, before I can get into my real reason being on here right now or the topic we're going to discuss today, Windows 11 is more evidence that anyone that thinks Nintendo is evil and whatever, you're either lying to yourself or you don't know Microsoft, because this thing has been nothing but a nuisance since I've downloaded it. And so that you know, the threat was Windows 10, which also had major issues. I think the best Windows Microsoft ever released was probably 4.3, but that's my experience. But Windows 10, which was also loaded with issues and not as good as Windows 7, which I think was still better than XP. But they said they were never going to support that after the 15th of October this month. So I had to upgrade. And I upgraded, and it's been a nightmare ever since. So the last week, I've had about 11 updates here, and there was another update. 3 or 4 of these updates in the last week required me to restart this computer a bunch of times. And when I wake up in the morning, I have my cereal, and either I have to go to work or I choose to write a couple pages of my next novel. This will be the 7th. I'll tell you more about it when it comes out. And I turn the computer on, and it's just not loading up my start menu. It's not doing anything other than showing some icons. And that white light that loads things, that tells you that it's processing, it was just going on. It wasn't by any point of the first few minutes that I turned this computer on, turning off. So it was processing and processing and processing. Now, anytime this happens, Birria's back, baby. And welcome back. Glad you're here. Nice to see you, especially that I just started. It's not like it's at the end. But whenever because I've had a problem where one of my old CPUs turned on and was trying to load from the internet since the motherboard exploded, more or less. Every time this computer seems to be working too hard, I get nervous because I do not want to spend another $900 on another CPU. I don't want to deal with it. And it was chugging and chugging and chugging. And finally, it turns out it needed a new Windows 11 update, not just the other one from the start, baby. Not just the other one about the virus defender, but a Windows 11 update with a number and everything. And I just have to ask this question. Aside from the fact that Nintendo makes everything a lot more affordable, whether or not you like the Switch 2 4K version of Pokemon or whatever, why is it that when they have an operating system update on the Switch 2, and you could say, well, it's a console. When they have an operating system update on the Switch 2, 2 minutes. It doesn't even take that long. It tells me there's an update, downloads it, comes back up, and sometimes, especially on the Switch 1, that update is extreme. This one, it's a new Windows 11. I have no background picture, nothing, no wallpaper. It's just a black screen with icons. And I see no difference. So now that that's happened, I'm going to wait and see if I will have a well-running PC for the next week or two before another update. But yeah, Microsoft is disgraceful. Sony sucks. But let's move on to the only gaming company in town in terms of console gaming. Recently, there was a story that there was a breach in the Nintendo database. Typically, when you hear that, you shit your pants because everyone's credit card information and private information is on most of these platforms that get hacked. More or less, you won't know about it until you get an email or a letter down the road. Typically, if something comes in the mail, it's that the company that was breached wants to tell you, don't worry, you were hacked, so check your credit card, but we solved the problem after the fact. Or you get an email saying, by the way, data of yours was stolen and you could be up for a lawsuit. I've had that a couple of times. I got like $5 out of it. It's completely pointless. It makes you feel all excited. Ooh, I'm going to get emotion in my position. It's nothing. You get nothing out of it. Since it's $1 billion settlement or whatever for millions and millions of people, you get nothing out of it. I haven't heard anything from Nintendo. Typically, I've never had a problem with this. But the funny thing about it, and this is so Nintendo, the breach happens and there's nothing about anybody's information, private information. They already know who did it. The person pretty much came out and said it. And to make matters even stupider in this modern society, they were showing the evidence themselves, or at least somebody had picked it up from the hackers. And it was all about a new Pokemon game, more or less, or other games that were leaked. In fact, Player Essence, which is a very popular channel here on YouTube, seems like a really cool guy, very sweet guy. He's apparently older than me. And I think he has at least one kid or something, so he's doing better than I am. But he's somebody that I find reputable to an extent. It's not that Firefox, Nintendo, no, they're total BS. But he kind of gets a lot of information from mostly tweets and everything. Doctray, too, is a small... I tell people about these guys because I feel that they're harmless. They're not really perpetuating any kind of stupidity or whatever, and they're pretty much giving it to you straight. The information that was leaked was more or less about a new build from the ground up Pokemon game. Now, speaking on that subject matter, there is a new Pokemon. What do you like to this new Pokemon game, Legends ZA? It was announced earlier this year. Obviously, it's on Switch 1 and Switch 2. I have no interest in Pokemon. Zero. I play Shin Megami Tensei. Shin Megami Tensei 5 is one of the greatest games I've ever played. Canon of Vengeance, or Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance, is really good. It's nowhere near as good as the original, whether people want to admit that or not. I am thinking of making a video about it now that I am on Premium YouTube and I can download my own videos again. I'm thinking of making a video involving exactly what it is that makes the original one better than Vengeance, despite the fact that the internet would lead you to believe otherwise. The internet is mostly run by a bunch of pretentious United States types who think that if you don't like every character in a game or a movie, then it's not good as a story, which they don't know anything about stories. And I've made this point a million times, and I keep trying to make this point a million times. If I had 700,000 subscribers or 7 million subscribers at this point, which I figured I would, then I would be listened to. Then, really? It's free? Oh, all right. Is it a demo? The original one is so much better. Now you can play the original one. Yeah, no, it is. I still haven't. I've played through SMT5 4 times, and I've added 3 more times. So I've played. This is my 7th playthrough that I stream on Twitch about 6 o'clock in the evening to about 8 or so Saturday evenings. So tomorrow evening. Really? Shit, that's not bad. Yeah, no, if you could play it, I would definitely play it. It's really, really good. Well, the original one, as I said, which you can play, it's called the Canon of Creation. That's the one you choose not to hang with Yoko. That one, minus the Magatsuhi rails and a couple of side quests, that's the original one. That one is one of the greatest games I've ever played. Well, even so, that's still there. It's still nice. Canon of Vengeance or Vengeance itself is good. It's really good. They just took things out. Like if Canon of Vengeance or Vengeance itself, if that version was the original version, I would have thought it was a great game. I wouldn't have liked the story and how they completely pulled the whole many subplots equals one plot. No, it equals one mishmash of nothingness. The original game told the same Judeo-Christian anime version, but made it about you, the main character, and what you're going to do. And how they had the different endings represented is such beautiful literal irony. It goes to show you that when it's Japanese, because don't forget, Shin Megami Tensei 5 originally was a Switch 1 exclusive. Originally, it was released on the Switch 1 exclusively. Shin Megami Tensei, since pretty much the first SMT, I said this before, I said this last week, not including Digital Devil's Story, since the first SMT, I believe they were all exclusive to Nintendo consoles, whether it was the Famicom, Super Famicom, and then, of course, the 3DS. The only ones that weren't were Nocturne, which was released on the Switch 1 years later. And as I mentioned last week, the online one, the MMORPG, which was completely different than anything that I remember. Typically, when you play Shin Megami Tensei, the world has ended and you have to rebuild it. That's pretty much what it is. It is very dreadful. It is very heavy. And it is fucking beautiful. Shin Megami Tensei 5 was one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. In the way that it ran, in the way that it looked, and all the ladies, most of which, with the only exception being Nua, I believe, from the original game, all came from a previous entry. Most, like Anahita, was from 4. So was Ishtar. She was from Strange Journey, actually. But a lot of the other ones were from Nocturne. The mermaid, I think the mermaid came from Strange Journey. Was it Strange Journey or 4? I forget. But it was one of those. Danu came from Apocalypse, 4 Apocalypse, which was kind of like the SMT5 Vengeance of 4, which I would love to play. I would love for them to re-release that. That's really when you start doing the luster candy. That's really when they start showing you how many defensive upgrades or debuffs that you gave to the opposition or you took on your own. Originally, you would just keep doing whatever buffs there were or whatever debuffs there were, and you would not see any. It would just, you'd see the results and the damage output. That was about it. But this one kind of counted it up, and you can max it out at 2. I believe it was 2. It could be 3 in the 4, I guess you can say series. There was 2 of them. But whatever the case, they were originally Japanese-centric, more or less, and they only were released on Nintendo consoles. So that one originally was a Nintendo exclusive. Then they branched out to all these other consoles, and that's when it got worse. But like I said, I would never tell you Vengeance was a bad game. It's a really great game. It's just that the cutscenes, which you can skip, get a little bit too drawn out and don't tell a focused tale. And the funny thing is that the characters themselves don't really get any more explained than anybody else or than they did before. It's just, but if you play creation, which is you don't go with Yoko, then you're playing the original game, which is, as I mentioned, Magatsuri rail things. Masakata wasn't there. The super bosses were Shiva and the Demi Fiend if you download the DLC, which of course I did. Now I played through it here. Well, I played through it on my gaming channel when it first came out, and then I played through Vengeance upon second release, and there were issues that I had with Vengeance. Typically, there are issues I have with a lot of games because more or less I'm trying to get them done. But I just, like I said, I found it funny that they released nothing but, it was almost as if Nintendo had a Nintendo Direct. But as I was saying, I'm a Shin Megami Tensei type, not into Pokemon, not into it at all. I told you about what happened last week where I was waiting online to pre-order Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which I did, paid in full, and there was a huge line for these Pokemon cards. I don't get it. I played Sword and Shield. It was okay. They were fine. Wasn't into them, but from what I can tell with A and Z, Legends A through Z, whether it's the format or whatever, I would never play it, but I wouldn't be against it. If there was any feedback on my gaming channel of this one, and people said, like they said back when I had some consistent viewers on Twitch, I want to see you play Pokemon. If there was any feedback, I wouldn't have too big a problem playing through it from what I can tell. And listen, it's a Japanese game. A lot of the young ladies, though they're very cartoonish, are very attractive. It's Japan. They're anatomically pretty accurate. So it's not like it would be a terrible playthrough for me, but I'm not into it. However, the talk now is that, of course, there was a video that, of course, it's an underwhelming or something, expensive disappointment. I'm going, of course, you have to mention the money aspect because Nintendo is so greedy now. Nobody else is. Everybody, Nintendo's never been like this where they have expensive games. Never. Nor do they drop in value. That never happens either. So it was just funny that was brought up. And then, once again, it was hilarious that they breached and all of this stuff about a new Pokemon game came out. There's talk about a new 3D Mario game. Duh. There's talk about when they're going to do the next, or when they're going to announce the next Animal Crossing. I don't know if I'll go into another Animal Crossing. I did it because there was really nothing going on. And then, of course, we were in lockdown. So there wasn't much happening at that point. But I don't know. I'll have to see. I didn't mind Animal Crossing. It's just that after a while, it became sort of like a task I had to achieve, like a chore. And I felt bad because although there are little animals that don't really say words and they're not real, it's just a video game. I felt bad not hanging out with them. It's like so weird. Oh, God, Nintendo. What a company. What an extraordinary company. Good thing we got them. Somebody else had a video that Nintendo's what's wrong with the video game. No, Nintendo is not what's wrong. You being a wannabe PC critic hack, you're what's wrong. And that's why Nintendo is blowing everybody out of the water again, because you wanted these movie games. I don't know who made the law that video games, as I said last week, had to be realistic looking and had to be movies. I don't know who made that rule, but people are tired of them. And Nintendo is just doing what Nintendo does, making games, making fun, replayable games. You're gonna kill them for it? Griffin Gaming is streaming right now, which I shouldn't say because that's probably gonna, if there was a large crowd here, people would probably be jumping to that. But his title is, I'm going to quit my job and be a Nintendo shill, because he's playing through Pokemon A through Z. It really looks like it would be a lot more fun. And listen, I get there is an allure. I get there is something to part. It's not like it's just complete. garbage, or there's something to it. It's more than just anime charm. It's one of the biggest things out there. And not even in the video game industry in general, just in general. There were movies, there was a cartoon. I mean, it's everything. It's everywhere. So there's a reason for that. I just don't see it. I don't see why it's so big. You know what I mean? That's what she said. I don't get why people would be obsessed with it. There was an application game, a cell phone application game. I'm sorry, excuse me. Whenever I eat my mid-afternoon snack, it gets stuck in my throat sometimes. That's what she said. But there was a game called Pokemon Go. I don't even know if it's still there. My friend called me up one day and said, our friendship hangs in the balance of this. Do you play Pokemon Go? I go, I never even heard of it. But people were obsessed with just finding these things. And I could see why to an extent. But in terms of a game, it's Shin Megami Tensei for morons. Like Persona. Persona is Shin Megami Tensei for morons. It's not as challenging. It's not as deep. There's not much more to do other than roar or gaze or whatever, or leer. How you make the king leer, put the queen in a bikini or whatever. And then you bite, you tackle, you do your thing. You get what I always said, sounds like a detergent ad. It's super effective or it's not effective or whatever. And at the end, you win your battles and you move on. You collect the Pokemon. The collecting I get, if they were to do something, and I know you can't because they already did that with Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest monsters, where you would breed them, like with Shin Megami Tensei, where you confuse them. And now the debate, I have to look because I'm not sure exactly. I think the first Monsters game, and I don't like to give Square Enix or Squaresoft any credit for anything. Aside from Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior, that's their best series by far. Discussing this and debating it, it's not worth your time because it's just by far. And one of the reasons is because not only is it a deeper combat system than Final Fantasy, but it doesn't take itself seriously, which Final Fantasy does. In fact, it makes it into a joke. And it had Jade. My Jade. God, did I love that one. But, and I didn't want them to, this is just 11 anyway. I know there were other stunning babes like the redhead from 8, but I forgot her name. So I'm going to forget that. But I forgot what the names of the twins were. However, they really did one dirty when they made her have to take a curse or a spell that turned her back into a child and then killed her off. But they kept the really cute tall one alive. So that was good. But whatever the case, I'm not sure if Monsters did the whole breeding thing first or if Shin Megami Tensei, which it isn't breeding, it's fusion. It's different to an extent. I guess it's semantics. But whatever the case, that is an element that adds to the whole collection thing. So if you're just collecting Pokemon, there's really no allure to that if it's not also doing something with your collection, in my opinion, anyway. But people love it. So that came out, and I'm watching it, and as I said, it seems as if I wouldn't mind if I had to play that one. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to watch the rest of it. Right now, I'm still going through Hades 2 on my gaming channel. Nobody gives a shit. I'm also playing my Civilization games on my Civ on Switchman channel, which is a new channel. And I'm going through the next Napoleon. There were 2 Napoleons that were released if you linked your accounts, and they were changed or upgraded with the new 1.2.5 patch. So I'm playing through the Revolutionary one, which is the second one, and I'm doing pretty well. We'll see how Exploration treats me. But that's pretty much, I wanted to just talk about that, how a leak comes out. I don't hear anything until people start talking about the gaming info that came out of it. Also, on a quick note, sports have been dead here in the United States for a very long time. It's way too corrupt. It's only a small group of rich kids who don't want to earn anything for a living They suck at what they do. This is just a fact. If you compare them to the players of the past, there is no comparison. The rules were a lot more strict. The defense was a lot more ramped up. The players were a lot more polished and fundamentally solid, and they were a lot smarter and a lot more gifted. Now it's just a very small pocket of individuals that are allowed, and they have to dumb every game down to make it easy for them to look successful. And really, what does it mean, look successful? You put up stats, and ESPN shows highlights of you, and that's it. And they appeal to this computer, social media obsessed society who they can afford the tickets. They go out there, they watch these games in these arenas, in these stadiums, in these ballparks. They show their little highlight reels on Instagram and everything. They get more hits, they get more views, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a cyclical process. But to prove this point, the league championship series is going on right now, American and National. And my God. So the Toronto Blue Jays destroyed my beloved Yankees, who are now my rather despised Stankies. They're an embarrassment to the franchise. And they go at home, because they have the better record, against the Seattle Mariners, who are not owned by Nintendo, but Nintendo has influence because they wear their Switch 2 patches proudly on their arms. And in Seattle, the Blue Jays unload on them and win 2 games. So you think, well, shit, they're going to sweep this thing. Then they go home to Toronto, and Seattle's beating the shit out of them. Makes no sense. And then you ask the question, well, who's starting these games? Who's pitching? Because that was baseball. That's what baseball is. It's pitching. It's not hitting. It's pitching. The hitters have to earn the hits and the runs by hitting great pitching. And if the pitcher is off and the hitters are used to great pitching, they'll kick your ass. In this sense, we have openers. We have starters that go 4 or 5 innings because they throw their arms out in the first 1 or 2 innings, throwing 75 to 78. The radar guns read 106, 102, 94, 98. No, they're not throwing anywhere near that hard. I'm sorry to tell you. I throw harder than these guys from 68 feet away. I'm sorry to tell you that too. And that's with dead tennis balls on flat ground. So sorry, they don't throw that hard. That's a lie. And they've been lying about fastball velocity for a very long time. In fact, there was a special documentary called Fastball about how they were gauging the fastballs thrown. And they were saying that at that time, which was about 2010, you had to take at least 10 miles an hour off every fastball or every pitch radar gun reading, because they were gauging it from the hand, and the ball loses speed through the path. You're supposed to really get it through the hitting zone. The hitting zone is where the batter's swinging through the pitch. So that's really where it matters. So if you're throwing the ball at 0.7 seconds, because we have to do everything with analytics and numbers, if you throw the ball from your hand to the glove, wall, whatever you're throwing to, within 0.7 seconds, you are throwing anywhere between 70 and 75 miles an hour. That's based on how you gauge speed. If you throw the ball and it gets there in half a second, that's about 90 to 92 miles an hour, depending on where you're letting go of the ball. I have seen on old television broadcasts, you can see them right here on YouTube, Nolan Ryan, who they claim now, threw 109. He didn't throw 109. Okay? From what I could tell, he threw about 91. The radar guns back then were saying 95, 96, 97. Clemens, too. Their shit gets there in half a second. That's what that is. That's how it goes from their hand to the glove. Like that, right? Every pitcher now, it gets there in 0.2 seconds longer. So you have to explain to me how they're throwing harder when it's taking longer to get there. And that's on every pitch. So they don't even change speeds. So there's no pitching. These hitters swing like they're playing golf. And why wouldn't they? They're a bunch of rich kids. That's probably what they grew up playing. And they have no concept of two-strike approach, no concept of choking up on the bat, hitting the ball opposite field. When these guys hit the ball opposite field, it's by accident. It's not by design. That's not their approach. Jeter would always go to opposite field when he could. A lot of the great hitters of the past would always put the ball in opposite field. This is how you hit the ball where it's pitched. That's an old adage from before I was born, and that was back in ancient times. So the idea that they're throwing hard, that's a fucking lie. Okay. These ESPN, Disney, they're lying. These guys are not more talented. I've been in the fitness industry for years. I've said this before. Nothing's changed aside from the fact that you kids like to work out in your socks. I don't know why. That should be against the rules. It is against the rules. I don't know why I see, especially young women, walking into the gym with these bathroom sandals or whatever and big ass baggy socks. And the moment they get a weight on somewhere or whatever, the sandals come off and they start doing their thing. And I'm going, how does that help? How does that help? There's no new technology. Listen, I work in a gym or a club that boasts itself as being a pretty high quality club. Nothing's changed, guys. Maybe recovery has. And boy, that helps these so-called athletes a lot because they're always hurt. But it's just more evidence that the standard of sports, especially baseball, has dropped precipitously when we have a series like that. And then conversely, in the NLCS, the fucking Dodgers, who couldn't get out of the division series when they would win 106 games every single season, now suddenly they have become the old Brooklyn Dodgers who go to the World Series every year. And Ohtani actually got a hit yesterday. It was pretty amazing because he doesn't hit shit. He's fucking useless. But especially when he's leading off, which, hey, let's keep leading him off. That makes sense. We're playing stickball now, playing softball. You have your best hitter batting. Even in softball, you have your so-called best hitter batting fourth or third. You want him to get in a position to produce runs. But no, not anymore. Now you bat your so-called best hitters one or two, and then the four hitter is some schmuck that can't drive in a run. But this is what analytics, more or less analytics is just anarchy. It's, well, because we have computers and we're rich and we've always been rich and we're smarter than the common folk that had baseball and made baseball years ago, we're just going to prove how much better and smarter we are with all this analytical shit, which more or less just lies to you that these are better athletes when they're not, because you're comparing them to their contemporaries. But in that series, the number one team in the National League and in baseball, record-wise, hasn't won one game in this series. Not one. The Brewers have not won one game. Dodgers won 93, 94 games. Brewers won like 98. And that's saying something about how bad baseball is now, because you had teams like the fucking Rockies and the White Sox, yet again, two dead franchises that haven't done squat in decades. The Rockies haven't done anything since they were incepted. And they had a fantasy, an expansion draft. Even the Marlins have been able to win 2 World Series, one of which was given to them more or less because the Yankees should have beaten the Red Sox in 4 or 5 games in 2003, and they were not prepared pitching-wise. And Aaron Boone had a swing and a pitch over his head with bases loaded in 3, 2 count on him in extra innings in Game 5. But whatever the case, but that was Game 4. Sorry. Whatever the case, the Dodgers are winning every game, giving up 1 run per game. And yesterday, down 2-0, the Brewers manager had the brilliant idea of saying, hey, let's start an opener lefty to get through the 2 lefties, whom he didn't get out. Modern baseball, folks. And then they were saying how this kid that they were putting in there, he throws so hard. And they were clocking him at 95 to 103. And I'm going, each one of those pitches is exactly the same pitch as an off-speed pitch. How is that 100? Whatever. But I was saying, wait a minute, if he throws hard, the guy before him was being clocked at 97, 98, and you were orgasming over that. So what's the difference? There is no difference. But this is what baseball is now. And this is why I do watch. I get angry. This is not the game I grew up with. It's absolute trash, like most things here in the United States are. But we still have Nintendo, folks. And that's the one thing that I can. And you have me. So there you go. Firaxis did do a good job with Civilization 7. There is finally somebody that made a video, because I'm really convinced now that it's these people are either artificial intelligence sites where they just pay for things and react and have artificial intelligence do the video and do the voiceover as they write a screenplay or a script, whatever, that's hogwash. Or that they're paying a lot of money for vidIQ and TubeBuddy, and whatever they tell them is trending, they have to just make a video on. Hey, I did that back when I made my first channel, or when I used it for these purposes. And I would get the newspaper and I would read the newspaper and say, oh, here's something I can talk about. And I would talk about it. I mentioned this before. My first video that kind of hit was a video about Miley Cyrus posing naked at 15 years old. That was the first one that I hit with back in 2008. Then I started doing impressions of movie scenes. And people would say, oh, can you do this movie and that? And I would do impressions of those. Really, that was a dare I made with my friend because I had seen trying to study all of the lines from the original Star Wars when my cousin and I were doing our spoof on the 3 movies. I told him I could pretty much recite the whole movie. And he wanted me to show him. So I did that. But yeah, like that was back then. But somebody finally said that Civilization 7 is better than 6. And it is. It's better than 6. It's better put together. It's not as buggy or as laggy. It's not as one-sided towards the computer or towards you based on what your difficulty is. And the game is not done yet, which I do have an issue with. But how long did it take for Firaxis to finish 6? It took at least 5 years to get all the gameplay options, to get all the characters. So I'm not going to nail them specifically for not being done or remotely done with 7 in the first 8 months. We'll see where that goes. I'll be posting those videos on Civ on Switchman, as I mentioned before. We'll be back on next week with more. I'm going to complain about some stuff again. I am thinking of that Shin Megami Tensei 5 video, but I will be reviewing sooner rather than later. The Hades 2 game, I have fought Kronos, the final boss, in the scouring of the southern area. Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for hanging out with me. And I am almost done with that. I went up to the surface and fought Eris. So I've known enough about the game to tell you. And once I think either it's going to be tomorrow, I'll just do a review of it, or a couple of days from now. I'm not sure when. Because it depends on whether or not I really want to get to the end or if I just want to say, okay, I've done enough. We are now about 3 weeks away from the next big video. And the next big project will, of course, be Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. That's going to be the next one. And then within a month after that, Metroid Prime 4. That's going to be freaking huge. And then not too long after that, Resident Evil Requiem. I just got to find out when I can pre-order it. So like I said, there's going to be a few more things here. I'm going to try to use my YouTube Premium account to download. Yeah, huge. Going to be tremendous. Prime 4 is something I've been waiting years for. Years. I think pretty much when I finished 3, I was like, oh, they got to make a 4th. We're talking a few console releases. And I think I want to make a video about where the hell is Punch-Out? Let's get another Punch-Out game, man. Come on. Punch-Out on the Wii was great. Let's get another one. What's with the non-Punch-Out love? It was one of the big Nintendo arcade games. Had a sequel and everything. Nintendo had a few sequels, Donkey Kong, Super Mario Brothers, stuff like that in the arcade. But typically arcade games didn't get sequels. Not when I was a kid. And I got 2 in 2 years. So I want some of that. I probably want to do a video about that. But anyway, so we're going to have a lot coming up. And I'm going to see if I really want to do this Shin Megami Tensei 5 video or what. But I will see you all next week. If I don't make a video this week, which I'm pretty sure I will. So I'll see you all then.